I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability. Let's start with your spending. You are on track to trigger the Anti-Deficiency Act. That means you are going to spend more money than you have been allocated by Congress. This is a rare occurrence, and it is wildly illegal. Your agency will be broke by July, over 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. You may not think that Congress has provided enough money to ICE, but the Constitution and the federal law does not allow you to spend more money than you have been given or to invent money. And this obsession with spending at the border, as the chairwoman mentioned, has left the country unprotected elsewhere. The security threats to the United States are higher, not lower, than when before Trump came to office. To fund the border, you have illegally gutted spending for cybersecurity. As we speak, Russian and Chinese hackers are having a field day attacking our nation. You've withdrawn funds for disaster prevention. Storms are going to kill more people in this country because of your illegal withholding of these funds. Your myopia about the border, fueled by President Trump's prejudice against people who speak a different language, has shattered many of this country's most important defenses. Madam Secretary, AI is an enormous growing industry critical to the future economic health of the country. We have had the benefit over the years of the top talent in AI, researchers, students coming to the United States to help us grow that industry. But for the first time in the last 15 years, there are more top talented individuals and workers in AI leaving the country than coming here. And the reason is pretty simple. People who are coming here to work from overseas through the visa program are very uncertain about what their rights are. And that is because of the actions this administration has taken. So I think it's important to get on the record for those individuals who are here currently and those thinking of coming to the United States to work or to study to understand what their rights are. So let me ask you a series of pretty simple questions. Probably the key of right amongst the 5 freedoms is the right to free speech, the right to express your own personal opinion about politics, culture, the economy. Do you believe that you have the right to detain or deport a U.S. citizen for simply expressing their political opinion, a U.S. citizen?
No.
No. Do you believe that you have the right to detain or deport a legal permanent resident for expressing their political opinion?
I don't make decisions on legal status here in the United States. The Department of State does that, and I would say that as they've gone through an evaluation of who gets a visa, who gets legal status, green cards, they've been evaluating and discussing how that applies.
Well,
to people
I acknowledge
that
you don't. I acknowledge you don't make.
Right.
But if someone is a legal permanent resident of the United States, I'm not talking about an H-1B or a student visa holder. I'm talking about a legal permanent resident. If you are a legal permanent resident, do you have the right to detain or deport that person simply for expressing their political opinion?
The Department of State makes those decisions.
No,
and the
they
Department
don't.
of Homeland Security.
You make that decision about who you have the right to detain or deport. So you are involved in that? Do you believe the United States, do you believe the law allows?
The Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration is enforcing the law, following the constitutional rights of folks who are here as citizens, those who are here legally, and those who are here illegally.
So a legal permanent resident is by definition here legally. Do you believe, I mean, I think this is really troubling if you can't answer this simple question. Do you believe that the U.S. government can detain and deport a legal permanent resident for expressing a political opinion that the administration disagrees with?
The determination you're asking for is based on things that you are determining that the Secretary of State has considered and evaluated. We don't evaluate that, the administration, along with a partnership with the Department of State, on what is political speech and what's an affiliation with a foreign terrorist organization.
Do you believe?
That's the difference between the two that you're asking.
That you can detain and deport a legal permanent resident for expressing a political opinion?
We have not detained we have not deported anybody who's a legal permanent resident or a citizen of the United States.
Then say you don't have the ability to do that.
We have
clarify that for the
true.
Millions of.
That is exactly what I'm doing, is that we have followed exactly what the law is, and that we have not detained or deported anybody who's a citizen or has legal status in this country. We are focused on the worst of the worst dangerous criminals.
You do not believe you have
to get them out of the country.
You do not believe you have the ability to do that.
We have not done that at all, and the Trump administration has no plans.
Well, just because you haven't done it doesn't mean that you won't do it in the future.
We are following the
believe you have the
federal law
ability
to
to do that or
ensure
not?
that we are doing
I think you
the
are going to.
exact appropriate thing in partnership with the Department of State and in partnership with the Trump administration.
Have you read I assume you have read the Supreme Court decision in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia?
Yes.
That court decision requires the administration to facilitate Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release from El Salvador. Can you describe the steps that you have taken to facilitate this release? And specifically, can you answer as to whether you have reached out to your counterpart in El Salvador to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release?
Abrego Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador and should never have been in this country and will not be coming back to this country. There is no scenario where Abrego Garcia will be in the United States again. If he were to come back, we would immediately deport him again because he is a terrorist, he's a human smuggler, and he is a wife beater.
You've read the Supreme Court decision. Does the Supreme Court decision not require you to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia?
The Trump administration is complying with all court orders and judges' orders.
Does the Supreme Court order require you to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia?
Is a citizen of El Salvador. It is up to the president of the El Salvador to make the decision.
You're a defendant
on
in
if
the
he
case.
is coming back. It's been a big topic of conversation between all of us, between the country. When the president visited the United States of America, it was discussed and talked about there. The president has been very clear on this issue, as the Secretary of State and I have as well. Abrego Garcia is not a citizen of this country and is a dangerous individual who does not belong here.
I will not ask another question, Madam Chair. But the discussion,
we would immediately
but the discussion ends when the Supreme Court rules 9-0 that you have to facilitate his release. And the fact that you can't even acknowledge the wording of the order, which commands you to facilitate his release, and you advertise to this committee that you are going to willfully ignore the ruling. And that is incredibly chilling for the balance of powers in a democracy that relies on the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McMahon, good to see you. You and I have spent a lot of time over the years, and I appreciate your willingness to sit before the committee and answer some really important questions. I want to talk to you about an executive order that the Trump administration issued that commands agencies, including the Department of Education, to eliminate grants to organizations and entities that support DEI programs and activities. As you know, this has a lot of schools all across the country scrambling because they have no idea what that means. They don't know, because the order doesn't define DEI, as to whether they are in compliance or out of compliance and whether they are going to have their federal grants compromised. How does a school know whether it's running a DEI program or not?
Well, certainly, and thank you, Senator, and it is good to see you again outside of the state of Connecticut, where we run into each other. DEI, I think, has been, it's a program that's tough. It was put in place ostensibly for more diversity, for equity and inclusion, and I think what we're seeing is that it's having an opposite effect. We are getting back to more segregating of our schools instead of having more inclusion in our schools. When there are DEI programs that say that black students need separate graduation ceremonies, or Hispanics need separate ceremonies. We are not achieving what we wanted to achieve with inclusion.
Let me give you an example then. So this order applies to Department of Defense schools, and those schools have canceled all programming around Black History Month. So if a school in Connecticut celebrates Martin Luther King Day and has a series of events and programming teaching about Black history, are they in violation of a policy that says schools should stop running DEI programs?
Not in my view. That is clearly not the case. The celebration of Martin Luther King Day and Black History Month should be celebrated throughout all of our schools. I believe that Martin Luther King was one of the strongest proponents of making sure that we look at all of our populations when he said that, he would hope that his children wouldn't be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And I think that is the fundamental basis that we should celebrate Black History Month.
West Point has closed down all ethnic clubs, so the Society of Black Engineers no longer can meet because they believe that to be in compliance with this order, they cannot have groups structured around ethnic or racial affiliations. Would schools, would public schools be in violation of this order? Would they risk funding if they had clubs that students could belong to based on their racial or ethnic identity?
Well, I certainly today don't want to address, hypothetical situations. I would like, once I'm confirmed, to get in and assess these programs, look at what has been covered.
Is that a pretty easy one? I mean, you're saying that it's a possibility that if a school has a club for Vietnamese American students or Black students where they meet after school, that they could be potentially in jeopardy of receiving federal funding?
Again, I would like to fully know what the order is and what those clubs are doing.
That's pretty chilling. I think schools all around the country are going to hear that. What about educational programming centered around specific ethnic and racial experiences? My son is in a public school. He takes a class called African American History. If you're running an African American history class, could you perhaps be in violation of this court order, of this executive order?
I'm not quite certain, and I'd like to look into it further and get back to you on that.
So there's a possibility, you're saying, that public schools that run African American history classes, right? This is a class that has been taught in public schools for decades, could lose federal funding if they continue to teach African American history.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I would like to take a look at these programs and fully understand the breadth of the executive order and get back to you on that.
I think you're going to have a lot of educators and a lot of principals and administrators scrambling right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time's expired.
There can be no doubt Elon Musk is a patriot. He has revolutionized entire industries, whether it is PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink. Across his businesses, there are so many things that he could be working on. But when President Trump asked him to join the administration, he answered that call. He said yes, and he committed himself to serving the American people and helping get this fiscal house in order. Last week, Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett said that all she wants for her birthday is to see Elon taken down. This rhetoric is inexcusable, and as the world's greatest legislative body, we should jointly condemn political violence. That's why I'm asking for unanimous consent to pass the resolution that condemns the horrific acts of violence, arson, and domestic terrorism committed against Tesla dealerships and facilities. There is no reason why Democrats should oppose this resolution.
Listen, come on. This resolution is not about violence or domestic terrorism. It just isn't. This is a resolution that says one thing, and one thing only. Elon Musk is in charge. He matters more than anybody else. Musk is subject to a different set of rules than everybody else. The Trump administration serves him, not us. The Republican Party serves him, not us. Elon Musk right now is effectively stealing from the American people. He is combing through our government, awarding himself contracts, canceling contracts for his competitors. He's shutting down agencies that stand in the way of his business, his growth. He's giving himself access to secret information about government enforcement actions against his competitors. He is also, at the same time, currently the largest funder of Republican politics in the nation. He spent $250 million backing President Trump's campaign. He recently told the president that he would contribute another $100 million to the president's political arm. And guess what? At that same time, the president stood on the White House lawn to give a taxpayer-funded commercial for Elon Musk's cars. That's corruption at a scale that we have not seen before in this country. The integration of the Trump White House and the Republican Party and the business interests of the richest man in the world. It's wrong. Now, this resolution claims to say something about domestic terrorism, but the only terrorism, the only violence it mentions is violence carried out against, you guessed it, Elon Musk. On an annual basis, there are 11,000 reported incidents of domestic terrorism. 11,000. Only a handful of them impact Tesla dealerships, but they're the only acts of violence mentioned in this resolution. 52% of the reported attacks were based on racial or ethnic targeting by radicalized attackers, but they aren't mentioned in this resolution. Only Elon Musk is mentioned in this resolution because a different set of rules apply to him, because he is in charge and he deserves protection that no one else gets. He deserves a White House TV commercial for his cars. He deserves to give himself contracts and steal from his competitors. He deserves to have his own resolution. And people are asking why. Why does the richest man in the country get this special treatment? To most people, it feels pretty fishy. It definitely feels wrong. Now, I hate violence of any kind, whether it's perpetrated against right, left, or center. I've spent my life on this floor fighting violence, but I also hate inconsistency. So I'm going to make my colleague a pretty reasonable offer here. At the same time that President Trump is saying that he's going to vigorously pursue people that attack Tesla dealerships, he's giving pardons to the people who beat the hell out of Capitol Police officers. So I don't think that we should consent to a resolution that says we care about violence, but only when it's committed against the business interests of the richest man in the world. And I have a way to solve that problem. Senator Murray has a really simple resolution, a resolution that expresses our disapproval of the pardons that were issued for the very specific set of individuals who on January 6th brutally attacked Capitol Police officers. Now, I understand that many of my Republican colleagues think that the people who trespassed here shouldn't have been prosecuted. Let's set aside that disagreement. This resolution just says that the specific set of people who viciously attacked police officers, the ones that hit the police officers over the head with metal poles, that those people shouldn't have been given a get-out-of-jail-free card. And so why don't we just be consistent? Why don't we say that violence matters when it's committed against Elon Musk's dealerships, and it matters when it's committed against the people that protect us? And so my offer is to just pass both resolutions right now. Right now. We could just agree by unanimous consent to your resolution, and we could agree as a body that you shouldn't pardon the people who brutally beat the people who show up every day to protect us. They matter too. Elon Musk isn't the only person that matters. Capitol Police officers matter too. So I'd ask the senator to modify her request to add the following: that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration, and the Senate now proceed to S-Res 42, a resolution condemning the pardons for individuals who are found guilty of assaulting Capitol Police officers, that the resolution be agreed to, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table. If we agree to move forward on this unanimous consent, I think we can move forward on the senator's request as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Representative, for your commitment to the country and your willingness to serve. I deeply appreciate the work that you have done to combat anti-Semitism. I appreciate your commitment to bring that work to the United Nations. I think it is a cancer, both domestically and internationally. You and I worked together over the last year and a half to dramatically increase funding for the not-for-profit security grant program that sends money to synagogues and Jewish community centers to invest in security upgrades. I'm heartbroken that we need to do that, but it is an important moment to support those communities. I agree that it's a problem you will confront at the UN. It is also a problem, as you have raised, domestically, both on the right and the left. I think anti-Semitism work is best when we call out what's happening on both sides of the aisle. What do you think of Elon Musk, perhaps the president's most visible advisor, doing 2 Heil Hitler salutes last night at the president's televised rally?
No, Elon Musk did not do those salutes. I was not at the rally, but I can tell you I've been at many rallies with Elon Musk, who loves to cheer when President Trump says we need to send our U.S. space program to Mars. Elon Musk is a visionary. I'm looking forward to his work in DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and look forward to looking how we can be more efficient and effective, but that is simply not the case. And to say so is the American people are smart. They see through it. They support Elon Musk. We are proud to be the country of such successful entrepreneurs. That is one of our greatest strengths as Americans.
Let me share with you what a few Americans have said about it. Evan Kilgore, a right-wing political commentator, wrote on X, "Holy crap, did Elon Musk just Heil Hitler at the Trump inauguration rally? This is incredible. We are so back." Andrew Torba, who's the founder of the right-wing Christian nationalist social platform Gab, said incredible things are happening as he amplified the visual. The Proud Boys chapter in Ohio posted the clip on a Telegram channel with the text Heil Trump. A chapter of the white nationalist group White Lives Matter posted it on Telegram. Thanks for hearing us, Elon. The white flame will rise again. I could keep going. Over and over last night, white supremacist groups and neo-Nazi groups in this country rallied around that visual. Does it concern you that those elements of the neo-Nazi and white supremacist element in the United States believe that what they saw last night was a neo-Nazi salute?
What concerns me is these are the questions you believe are most important to ask to the UN ambassador. I have a very strong record when it comes to combating anti-Semitism. We just had a historic election where President Trump earned historic support from American voters because of his strong leadership combating anti-Semitism, which has been a scourge across the country, skyrocketing since October 7th. So I intend to bring moral clarity to this position and continue to speak out as a voice, as a beacon of light, condemning anti-Semitism at the United Nations, which is representative of President Trump's record and President Trump's promises that he made on the campaign trail.
You are right. These are the questions I choose to ask because I think that your work and the administration's work on anti-Semitism only comes with real impact and credibility if it holds both right and left accountable. I simply don't believe that if a member of the squad made that same gesture last night, that there wouldn't be commentary from you and others. So I want to make sure that our work has credibility, and credibility comes with calling anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism behavior out when it comes from both the right and the left. Let me just turn to one issue that has come up several times and ask you for a quick response. The decision to leave the WHO, I think, is a mistake, but I think you would agree that we are going to need to still find a way to play a role internationally in global public health standards. We do not want to let the Chinese essentially set those rules for us because ultimately pandemics will find a way to us. Can you commit to this committee, notwithstanding the decision to leave the WHO, that you're going to make sure we find a way to have impact on the global stage when it comes to global public health rules?
I support President Trump's decision to leave WHO. I have a record of that. But yes, I think we need to be the leader in terms of global health. I think that's very, very important. And there are programs within the UN that are very committed to global health. We are the leader when it comes to global health. We need to absolutely continue to be so.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you to both of you for being here today. A few years ago, we worked really hard across the aisle to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, a bill that made changes in our gun laws, but in large part because it was a real priority for my Republican colleagues, also included billions of dollars in funding for school-based and children's mental health. Earlier this year, you did something extraordinary. You canceled $1 billion worth of existing ongoing grants to schools all across the country. And it's extraordinary because you didn't cut off new grants, you cut off existing grants. So in states all across the nation, blue and red, there are now mental health programs for kids that are shutting down, and kids who have been relying on really important adults in their life, these counselors and social workers, are losing access. You know Connecticut very well. You shut off a program that provides mental health resources to kids in crisis in Northwest Connecticut. When they did a survey of these kids and asked the kids who were in this particular program who the one adult was who they would go to if they were in mental health trouble or in response to a trauma, every single one of those kids in that program named the counselor funded by this program. You've shut that grant down. When those kids show up to school next fall, that trusted adult will not be there. You've told this program, as well as all the other programs, that the reason is they're violating civil rights laws. This program has no idea what you mean by that. And I guess I just ask you this. I'm sure you had to weigh, factors in making this decision, but did you worry about what your decision would do to these kids where you've ripped away their counselors and social workers literally in the middle of the program? Do you worry about what's going to happen to those kids in Northwest Connecticut and kids all across the country who have lost access to their trusted adults?
I certainly worry about mental health for children and adults all across the country. I certainly do.
I guess I'm asking specific. You must have weighed this. I assume you weighed this when you made this extraordinary decision to shut down $1 billion worth of mental health programming for kids. Did you worry about what you would do to those specific kids?
Well, what we have to do, I think, and that's what our simplified funding program is going to do, is to put programs into a single grant that's going to the states to be determined how that money can be best used.
But how did you weigh the impact? I'm asking about this specific decision. How did you weigh the impact that, again, these kids in Northwest Connecticut, they literally say, this adult is the most important adult in my life. And you made a decision to shut down that program. And this can be replicated all over the country. How did you weigh the impact on those kids? It's a really cruel thing to do to those kids. So did you think about the impact on those kids?
Well, I certainly can't evaluate every particular program in every school district across the state. There are some areas that need mental health more than there are others. And there were programs in the mental health program that did deal with DEI and with gender issues, et cetera. And it wasn't just about the kind of things that you're talking about. So in totality, as we look at mental health grants across the country, we have to make sure that those programs are being used to serve best in those communities. Yeah. So, therefore, a governor or a principal or a state superintendent would have the best information relative to what is needed in that particular state.
Yeah, we know what we need in Northwest Connecticut, and what we need is for the federal government not to rip funding away from these kids in need in the middle of the service program.
Or to better allocate the dollars you have and provide those professionals across the state that can handle it.
Let me ask you another question. Obviously, we're trying to understand what the Department of Education is doing with respect to the threats you've made against institutions of higher education. In the letter that you sent to Harvard demanding that they make certain changes, you told them that they had to end all of their diversity programs, but that they had to institute viewpoint diversity. That doesn't seem to make sense. How do you tell them to end all their diversity programs, and we assume that this is a mandate that you will make of other schools as well, how do you ask them to end diversity programs while instituting viewpoint diversity? Those seems to be totally contradictory.
No, the diversity programs that we've asked and demanded to be eliminated were the DEI, where they were, those programs actually were pitting one group against another.
Isn't viewpoint diversity a diversity program?
A viewpoint diversity is exchange of ideas that's actually better, absolutely.
Where
Now here, because Harvard only has 3%, by its own numbers, 3% conservative faculty, do you think they are allowing enough of viewpoint diversity through that teaching
Where
on
in
the
the
campus?
where in the statute does it give you the ability to cut off federal funding for a university based upon your decision, your determination that they don't have viewpoint diversity? Can you cite to a statute, an authority that Congress has given you to micromanage the viewpoint diversity of a college?
Well, certainly well, now let's back up.
Well, no. I think that's really important. Can
No,
you
no,
cite-
I'm
can you
going to answer
cite-
your question.
Can you cite a statute? Because you can't cut off funding for universities unless you have a statutory authorization to do so. So what statute gives you the right to tell any university that they have to have a certain mixture of viewpoints?
So here's what happened with Harvard.
No,
it
it's
was
a
the
pretty
same with
simple.
Columbia.
I don't mean to be. I don't mean to provide being hostile.
Well, I have to give you some.
I think you have to
some
cite the
background.
statute.
The statute's Title VI. These were civil rights violations. That is why we filed a case and defunded or stopped the funding for a while for Harvard as well as we did Columbia. And in that conversation with them, we talked about different things that they should do coming back to the table to make their programming better. The president of Columbia absolutely indicated, as well as the president of Harvard, that they needed to do things on their campus to eliminate anti-Semitism. That was kind of the crux of what brought us into talking to the different universities. And then we sat down with them to say, okay, these are other issues that you need to address on your campus because you do receive federal funding.
I am
and
well
under
over-
federal funding, if you are breaking the law,
I am
which
well
they
over my
did under
time,
Title
but
VI.
I don't
Well,
understand
I've
any
answered your
conception
question.
of
It was
civil
Title
rights
VI.
law to give you the authorization to micromanage viewpoint diversity on campus. That's not authorized under the civil rights title provided to you by the United States Congress. Thank you very much.
Senator Merkley.